Okay, Mr. Grindstaff.
I wanted to mention that starting back in 2010, when this came up, one of the requests the council made was to get a map from DWR. And DWR this week sent to me a map. And
a map of the state of California?
Of the state of levees in the Delta, island by island, as well as overall. And as soon as we can get it posted, we'll post that. But there's a lot of material there. And I wanted to mention that really is a follow-on to the discussion this council had. And Dave, thank you very much. It was an outstanding effort, something that is difficult to do, controversial, and related to this. And I think it will be significant, because our hope, once we can get our web people to help work on it, is that people will be able to look at the Delta and say, oh, there's my island, and click on it and actually pull up this map that says, this is the status of levees on my island. And I think having that information public is really a valuable service. And so I'm very appreciative to DWR for putting that together for us, even though I'm sure it wasn't without many problems.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very pleased that we were able to deliver that to you, along with quite a number of GIS products that will go on to the web and give a lot more specific information about the Delta. We had quite a few meetings with individual reclamation districts about the specifics of the data and how it was going to be presented. I hope it fulfills your expectations. And I look at the maps and the products as really a snapshot, and really the first snapshot of the Delta at one time in one place, and gives you an idea of where we are today and what are the potentials for moving forward. And then I think it'll help us to determine how it's best to move forward. So,
Mr. Nordhoff, Mr. Natoli.
Joe, you said that you hope that people will be able to call up an image of their own island and check the status of the levees. Is that just visual inspection, or will there be notations that these
There's
are strong
notations.
levees?
And I'm sorry I don't have them with me, but it actually, for each island, you can look at it, and Dave could respond to the details, but it shows this levee was improved at this point and meets this standard. This levee meets this standard. This levee doesn't meet any standard, and so you'll be able to look at an island and see fairly closely where the problems are, where work's been done. So I think it's a really significant effort that will help drive decisions.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Mr. Natoli.
Yeah, just along those lines, and who's responsible, Dave or Joe, for keeping that updated? We've got 4 projects before us. Those will get plugged in. I guess once they're completed or certified, they would. If there's other work, the reclamation district. So there's going to be an ongoing effort to keep the database current, but to keep the website or the information. Because I think your point was right on about the snapshot. But then that snapshot, if you're going to have iterations, so that you know you're making progress, or that you're challenged because of other things, and you get some areas that you're targeted. But I think the data assimilation is good, but then I think keeping it current, but also then helping to provide guidance, I think, going forward for all the entities that are involved in those improvements.
Certainly.
So who's responsible, I guess, for
Sure.
keeping that updated?
You make an excellent point. As all things in the Delta, this is a cooperative effort among quite a number of people. The individual reclamation districts are the ones that ultimately make the decision about whether their island qualifies at HMP, PL 8499, or some other standard. They will be the ones that are responsible for giving us the official data. Staff in my office have GIS capability, and will take that information and incorporate it into the overall master database, and periodically give us an update of that snapshot. And you are correct that every project that we do, the 5 that were approved and are in process right now, have made a change in what you will see in the map, and that change needs to be reflected. I think the map, as we march through time, is going to be a reasonable record of the progress that we make and how the funds are invested, and what the status will be as we move forward.
Well, so if you just understand, so the domain for that, though, will be with DWR, or will it be with the Stewardship Council, and that those updates that might get put into your system, then, again, I'll leave it to the folks who do the technical background behind this, but make sure, though, that, if there's a place people get used to going, if it's the, the council or DWR's website or whatever it is, to get that, or even hard copies of that information,
Sure.
the repository, but also what the source of the sources that depend upon that are updated concurrently. I think it's important. So.
Yeah, I can't speak for the council, but the department's map will be kept updated on a regular basis, and I would expect that the council staff will be periodically requesting the information, and as we get approval to release it, DWR will release it to the council.
And that's what I would expect. The DWR will gather the data, pull it together, put it into GIS format. Eric's been very diligent about following up with DWR, and we should congratulate him because he was very persistent on this. And
Absolutely.
Some people might go beyond persistent, but he was very good at following up, and I really appreciate that. And I think we want to continue that, and we'll get the data from DWR and post it so that anybody can get to it. And for us, a key issue is being able to make it publicly accessible so that people can actually see it and have it make some sense to them.
If I could, just maybe an annual update, somewhere, so that, again, you're not having to constantly,
right.
So put it on a some sort of a calendar, whatever that is, if it makes sense, and then.
One of the things you're going to find is, and it's not just related to our issue, but the recent report from the Department of Water Resources on the Central Valley flood issues discusses at great length the need for updating information and monitoring and evaluation. But, everybody's in favor of it, but nobody wants to pay for it is usually the problem with this. And this is not without cost. And if we could get, for our purposes on the Delta Plan, Dave, if DWR has some notions of what is a realistic and meaningful update schedule for information like that, that would be very helpful. It may not be possible to predict it, but groups like us meet all the time, and so we want all the information, and we want it to reflect all changes. But
Sure.
And Randy reminded me that our most active cartographer and map critic, Ms. Sward from Snug Harbor, will go through this with a fine-tooth comb, pointing out to you some problems and errors. But that's part of the process. And Don, it's a really important question. How frequently? You can't expect it to be updated weekly,
right?
Because it's very complicated. I don't know what the right test and standard are, Dr. Goodwin. There may be a measure used in other comparable situations of currency of information that would be useful to know, and we ought to hammer that out. The other thing I predict to a relatively high level of certainty that our IT experts in the office will be running around screaming a lot because I've never been exposed to the posting of an interactive document on the web that did not have problems. Now, this may be the one in history that has no IT problems, but I doubt it. But it's such an advantage to post,
Sure,
work out those problems, get comments, read the comments, respond. I mean, it's a marvelous tool, and I appreciated Dave, you and the gang producing it
I
with
have
all
to
the
say,
difficulties you went through.
every time I take a look at it, I have to go to my IT folks and say, well, how do I do this, and how do I do that, and what does that mean?
Right.
So you're absolutely correct. With respect to frequency of collecting the data, we try to get surveys on a 5-year recurrence. Sometimes that's pretty hard to do because they are expensive. I talked with my staff about reflying the Delta with LiDAR survey about every 5 years, and the response I get back is you would not see the change until either the levee heights are raised or the consolidation continues so that it's beyond the error band in the data. You're not going to see any difference. So that's one of those open questions that we're struggling with. I think we will keep updating the current master log and make a decision in real time about when it's appropriate to refly.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
And just, Dave, not on your report, but just to note, I support the staff recommendation on this, but I'll just make a comment. The discussion about the need to update information, the state role in that information, makes me nervous, as it always has, over potential legal liability for non-project levies vis-a-vis the Paterno case and the outgrowth of that. And I want to make sure that if we are recommending that the state assume financial responsibility for non-project levies in the Delta, we do it consciously, deliberately, and intelligently. And if we're not, we not back into it unknowing by asking for information. The Paterno case was based on the decision was based on a lot of factors, but one was the residual authority of the state or responsibility of the state for planning. And part of planning is evaluation and accumulation of information. And I would not like to find our successors 10 years from now sitting here with somehow a created legal responsibility that was not properly understood and kind of flows out of these activities. So I just want to be sensitive to it. We have the limited language in these projects, which I still don't think sufficient, but I'm not objecting to it because this, after all, this earmark was in statute as part of the legislative process. But in the larger sense of things, as we do all of this, I want to be conscious on that liability question and have the staff present to us the advantages, the disadvantages, and the dangers as we move through the Delta plan on this whole levy thing. Mr. Nordhoff.
This may be plowing ground that's already been plowed, but what are the criteria that were used in selecting these levees to be repaired? Was it those at greatest risk to falling down? Was it a scheduled maintenance and repair that was done before this committee was set up?
I think I can address a good portion of that. The Water Code talks about not less than $35 million of funding would be dedicated to islands which contain contain aqueducts which cross the Delta. Now, when you look at the Delta map, you can see one major aqueduct. So it lowers the number of potential participants in that to about 5. And those are the 5 islands that were ultimately selected for making repairs. Water Code further goes on to say that the repairs should be on those sections of levee that are most vulnerable to failure, and provides additional guidance. That guidance was used to make the selections.
So the first criterion then was the aqueduct, and then the second one was those that needed repair the most because they offer the greatest threat to collapse.
That's correct.
Fair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I was about to translate Dave's answer into English. The then president of the state senate, Don Parada from Alameda County, inserted the provision in the bond bill as part of the negotiations and the package. There is no doubt that there is a credible argument to be made about these levies, and it was viewed as just part of the normal legislative process. The Department of Water Resources would have, I think, preferred it go in the normal funding streams and categories and evaluation, but democracy allows legislatures and governors to alter things on occasion, as they do. I don't think it's a bad expenditure,
Yeah.
but we should not encourage the state to handle levy problems in isolation, waiting for those things to. There ought to be a policy, some clarity, some standards that are applied, clear understanding on cost-sharing ratios, clear understanding on beneficiaries paying a share, all of which we discussed in those hearings in 2010 about the first set of projects.
So all we did was bless the decision that was made by a superior body.
Recognize the earmarking of funds that was made, and earmarking in a way that, although there was there were some attempts to expand the definition of islands that might be eligible from folks not immediately related to the pipes running through the Delta, but anyway.
And the trees, was that legislative decision, or was that something that we decided?
The trees on the levee are part of were a part of the design. There was actually a credit given for improving habitat as a part of the engineering design package. I have to say that this particular set of projects has really highlighted the importance of having beneficiaries of the projects work closely with the reclamation districts to accomplish mutually beneficial goals. East Bay Mud has stepped up in a major way to protect their pipeline, to protect the levee, and worked very closely with the reclamation district in a way that I think should be considered as a model for other beneficiaries of Delta levees to adopt and implement. So I think there were some additional gains out of the projects beyond what we normally get.
Okay. Other questions, members? Other questions? Okay. Anyone in the audience like to speak to us on this item? All right.